Tulsa Music Stream. And now, your hosts, Scott, Jana, and Nine. You wanted the dirt on Tulsa. You got it.
Welcome to episode 83 of Tulsa Music Stream. We're so glad to have you guys with us tonight. My name is Jana. This is Scott.
Hey.
We already have Mick Sweda. Sweda, is it pronounced Sweda or Sweda? Sweda. Okay. Mick Sweda. We're going to get that right from the get-go. I've heard it pronounced both ways, so we wanted to clarify that with you. He's waiting in the wings for us on our Zoom call. We want to thank you guys again for being here tonight. Make sure you share the stream. We are available on many platforms. If you guys want to watch on YouTube, you can certainly do that. Let's put this up on the screen.
Yeah.
Available on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. All platforms can be seen, the live video. And if you guys are into audio only, we also upload the audio after the episode concludes onto your favorite podcast platforms, including Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. And Mick is on. He's not only on time, he's early, which is amazing for a musician to be early. We always just marvel at that. So thank you so much for being prompt and on time tonight. How are you doing?
I'm doing real well. As the years progress, you tend to not be so cavalier about being late. In the old days, fashionably late. That was my thing, man. So trust me, I'm trying to make up for all those decisions.
Hey, I totally get it. I know. Yeah, we find ourselves showing up 30 minutes early to things, and sometimes people get kind of irritated about that, but better early than late. So we really appreciate you being here. Before we get into your history, which I know you have talked extensively about on many other interviews, I want to catch up with you and see what's going on with the Hot Summers. First of all, let's put some stuff up on the screen. You guys released a really great album last year. And you guys can pick up the album on the Hot Summers, theHotSummers.com, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that is still available. So tell us, I know that you have said that it's you and Shane Tassert, and that was kind of the nucleus of the project. Have you guys solidified a rhythm section for this project?
Yeah, we have. We're actually just getting into rehearsals now, and hopefully we'll come up with some dates here coming up over the summer.
Right. So that was going to be my next question. If you guys had plans to get out there and do some shows in these warm months, sounds like you're working on that.
Yeah, we do it. Yeah, okay. Like I said, we're going to start rehearsals shortly, and sometime after that, hopefully we'll be able to get out there. We've been concentrating on other things at this point, but we're diving into rehearsals, like I said.
Can you tell us a little bit about how the project came together? How did you meet Shane? I know you had a vision when you started this project, and actually this has been in the works for several years. You wanted to create music that people just want to blast in their cars, like on those hot summer days. I think you guys definitely achieved that. The stuff, Shane, sounds so good.
Yeah.
It's such well-written material. Talk a little bit about just how things came together, the writing process, and if your vision came to fruition on the album.
Well, thank you very much. Those are awfully nice things for you to say, and I sure appreciate it. We did put a lot of hard work into it, and it all started actually with myself and Jimmy DeAnda, who was the drummer in Bulletboys.
Yeah.
We got together and started throwing some ideas around, and finally got to a point where we didn't have a voice for those ideas, and oddly enough, that's an important component.
Yeah, right.
So we just threw an ad out there, and Shane was one of the first guys to come along, and we hit it off right away. It was actually pretty amazing. It was, I suppose you'd say, fortuitous, and we had a lot in common, and got along really well, and we could relate and even write. Writing was so much easier than it had been in the past, and it was fun again. Right. And I really enjoyed that. So we progressed along for a little bit, and then Jimmy decided he wanted to move on and do his own thing.
Yeah.
So Shane and I were left with quite a bit of material, and by the time we started actually pulling together some of the recordings, some of which were much older and we finally had to say, look, we can't. We kept coming up with songs, and we finally had to say, okay, that's it. Let's just stop here and get this record done. And luckily enough, it was cohesive. We, were able to sort of transpose all the older recordings and the different studios and everything. And I think we did a good job of making it sound cohesive. And again, thank you for the compliments on the record. We're actually very proud of it.
You should be. So I take it, so if you get to go do some shows, are you guys already talking about another album? Are you currently working on that, or is it a little early in the game to be thinking that far ahead?
Those words have been spoken, yes. Okay. I know I'm pretty restless. I have been working on some other material for like what I consider to be a post-rock venture. So I just like to keep moving. But Shane and I have, in fact, I just sent him a track the other day to listen to. And so, yeah, that process has started, and we're really looking forward to it as well. But we love this record, and we'd love to see it through to its finale.
Sure.
Whenever that is.
You seem to always have great vocalists always around you at all times.
Yeah.
It's like a...
Yeah, thank you. I've been very fortunate, and I understand the process. In my early days, I was the singer by default in my, beginning bands. Right. So I know what it takes and how hard it is. And I've had a lot of respect for the guys that I've been fortunate enough to play with. Now,
you came from, I believe, was it New York to LA, or was it Canada?
Yeah, you're right. Western New York, but just a stone's throw from Canada. I have a great fondness for Canada, actually.
Right. Now, before we get too deep into the music talk, I have to ask this because Scott told me and I got real excited. You're a former hockey player, is that right?
I continue to play hockey, although some people would disagree that that's what I'm doing.
So real quick, and then I promise the people in the chat will get to music talk. Who's your pick for the Stanley Cup? I guess Vegas is probably going to take it, huh?
I had a feeling I'd get this question. I don't really have any skin in this game, but I like the Panthers. In fact, they took the spot of my beloved Buffalo Sabres, who I think missed out by 2 points.
Right.
So when I watch the Panthers, I keep picturing the Sabres in that same position. Although, obviously, because they won the President's Trophy last year, I mean they're a great team
for sure,
and they certainly deserve to be where they're at.
Right.
So all that said, I hope the Panthers can tie it up and make a nice game
series.
7 of it.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay, back to music. Sorry, guys.
So when you went to LA, what was the scene like when you got there? Were you intimidated? Was it something that you didn't expect, or something more?
That's a great question. I think I started out on the fringes of the scene, so I didn't really know what the scene was, but I jumped right into bands. In fact, one of the first bands I joined was a guy who had been with, and I'm dating myself, obviously, although he was much older than me even. He was playing with, I think his name is Arthur Lee. He did that song, Fire.
Yeah.
He had come from that band, so we were in costumes and masks, and it was like a crazy, crazy band. But I'm used to that because I'd done that before too. So I started there and ultimately ended up working in a cover band for quite a while until I finally quit and dove into playing original music.
Yeah, and a cover band almost pulled you back east, but you ended up staying out in California. And of course, that led to your stint with King Kobra. I know you mentioned before that when it came to the first King Kobra album, you felt like a guest musician because a lot of the material had already been written. But then as you guys got into the second album, the label started applying a lot of pressure on you guys to create hits, something marketable, I guess, in their eyes. And you commented that was kind of what was in your wheelhouse. Would you attribute that do you prefer writing that kind of material, kind of the power pop stuff, as opposed to like the edgier stuff that we heard later on with Bulletboys? Do you prefer that, or is it just something you're really good at?
Well, that's a great question. I think it just naturally comes from my upbringing, which is based in, those 60s bubblegum records. And that's kind of where my heart is. Like I'll pop on the 60s channel and just go back in time. I loved it, with Tom Jones and Tommy Rowe, a lot of Toms back then.
Right.
So I think that is just something that it's almost innate now because I grew up on it. I was basically born into it. But then obviously I got into heavier stuff like Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Iron Butterfly. Again, I'm dating, but those are my early teen years.
Sure.
And so I kind of stuck with the power pop sensibilities all the way up really until King Kobra. And to my mind, you may disagree, but a lot of that first record is power pop, although it might not have the same kind of energy or the same kind of delivery. A lot of those are pop songs, a lot of them are. And so when it came to making the second record, I thought, okay, cool. This could be a comfortable vibe for me. And I have more control and more say in what's happening. And unfortunately, the record just died. Although it's kind of funny when people bring up Home Street Home every once in a while. I wrote that on kind of a whim, and it ended up, on the record, to my surprise.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, somebody will bring that up, and it's like, wow, you remember that?
You guys, I own the album. When you first guys came out, I was a big fan, and I was also a big fan of a band called Icon. And you guys kind of had a lot of similarities as far as you had a great singer, you had the dual guitar solos kind of going on, and you guys came out with a heavy record, and then you guys kind of went more AOR, more of a, I guess, commercial pop sound to it, and then the singer, left, Icon, he left, and then Mark Free left, and I always, you guys were like two of my favorite bands. You guys weren't like one of the huge bands, but I always loved those types of bands that were just kind of on the cuff of making it huge, and with having this two, a great singer like that, that had to be like, hey man, we got to get something, popular with this guy. He's got that tone, he's got that voice, and of course you talked about Motley Crue, and you guys used that song, Raise Your Hands to Rock, which, like, I guess he took that title from Carmine, Nikki or whatever, and there was a lot of publicity about that, and then you guys went ahead and used the same title on the second album, which was pretty cool. But I always thought of you guys, you and Icon, as kind of like went almost the same paths, and it was almost in the same years as well. Well, did you know that Dave played with those guys? When I did. Game? Yeah, he played at Rocklahoma, and we got to catch that. And I actually talked to Dave. So I was a big fan. I followed you guys, and when you guys first came out, and I always wanted to know. And I guess you did work at Tower Records there in L.A., and that was part of my L.A. question I didn't get to. But you worked at Tower Records. Was that prior to King Kobra or during King Kobra? Yeah, it was actually prior. I was working there, and Carmine's manager came in, and at the time, I guess they hadn't found Johnny Rod, so he said, "Are you a bass player by any chance?" Wow. I told him I was a guitar player, and we just went our separate ways, and I never thought anything about it until Carmine just came into the store and came right up to me, and he said, "Hey, man, we need a guitar player now. Are you willing to dye your hair?" Okay. Wow. Why not? Yeah, did the reverse Motley, the blondes and the dark headed guy in the back, but I thought it was cool. It was different. It's always been kind of cringe to me, like, oh my God, Carmine really is. I mean, that just sounds so disingenuous, but oh well. I mean, that was his idea, and it ended up working, and I didn't have to have pink in my hair for too long. Now, you met more than just Carmine at Tower Records. I also met Michael Jackson. Is that correct? Yeah, that was pretty wild. He came in right as the store closed, which makes a lot of sense, I guess. And it was, the funny part to me was that he came over to the cassette section where I was, and he came right out. I was the only person there. He came right up to me and he said, "So, what's good right now?" And not even thinking like
he probably wants to, know something that he could appreciate. I said, oh man, you got to get the new Scorpions. It's freaking brilliant. Like Michael Jackson's going to buy a Scorpions album. But
you know what?
Really...
He probably enjoyed it. Wasn't he? He appreciated some of the harder and heavier elements of things, I think.
Well, that's good. I didn't know that at the time. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm sure he appreciated that.
I also met, in fact, speaking of the Scorpions, I saw Rudolph standing outside, and I'm not the guy to go up and introduce myself. That's not really my thing. I've done it a couple of times, but I did that with Rudolph. He's standing on the street corner of Sunset, and he looks like he's ready to go on stage. So I just went up and I said, Rudolph, man, new album is freaking great. Like, oh, thank you, mate.
That's too cool.
I never knew this until I started doing some research on you that Kick Axe actually were the writers of the song Hunger.
Yeah, that I think was a Spencer Proffer idea, because I think obviously, Spencer is really good at retaining publishing. It wouldn't surprise me if he had 100% of that song. So obviously that's why he was hoping to have a huge hit with it on our backs. Sure. Which, that's the music business. In fact, he had another song they put another Kick Axe song on that record too. I can't think of the name of it right now, but that's the way it goes, man. Somebody gets a hold of something and they just want you to keep recording it over and over. Carmine did the same thing with later on with Paul and Gene from Kiss. He got a couple of their songs, and they're all too happy to have their songs recorded.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
You also worked with Dwayne Barron, and that guy went and did a bunch of cool stuff with Ozzy, Kicks, LA Guns, and you guys worked with a lot of cool people.
Yeah, but he was really fun to work with. I do remember that.
Okay.
So let's fast forward. So you get out of King Kobra and you decide to start Bulletboys, and anyone who kind of knows the history knows that the song Smooth Up In Ya is what blew you guys up. When you guys were writing that, did you yourself have a hunch that this song's going to put us on the map?
No, not at all. Really? I wasn't really, I thought that, I wasn't sure. I can't remember exactly what I thought. I know I was worried about, it. I wasn't sure if it was going to, because I knew that everybody else liked it, and I knew that they were going to put a big push on it. And so when the single first came out and it died, which a lot of people may not know, we were in pretty serious trouble. And it looked like I know Warner Brothers wanted us to stay in town. As I've said before, our manager was like, oh no, we can't do that. These guys won't even make it out of the gate. Right. If we do that. So, and I can't remember the exact order of things, but when we did that video for Smooth Up and it just blew up on MTV, that was actually the second release of Smooth Up. So yeah, it was resurrected.
So you had to reintroduce it to MTV.
And you told the story about how, you guys were out on the road with Ian Hunter and Mick Ronson playing to like 40 and 50 people. Then all of a sudden, kind of unbeknownst to you, there's lines out the door because this video has gone stratospheric and put you guys out there. And that was really a big surprise, obviously a pleasant surprise for the band. How did your life personally change when that happened?
Well, there is a certain amount of weight that is released from your shoulders. Because like I said, the whole time, I think the record came out in September, and all the way up to December, which is, I think, when those gigs you were talking about happened, we were struggling. We basically demanded that Warner Brothers put us out on the road, and we were on that tour, like you said, with a couple of my childhood heroes. Right. So yeah. I was loving that. And especially to see Mick out there, however old he was at the time, but he still had his eyeliner on, and he was still looking to do some lines, and it was just amazing to see him. But again, we weren't sure that we had a happy ending to all that. So when things turned around, it was like, oh my God, thank you. And then so the dates started getting better and the tour offers started coming in, And so it was great.
So was the first tour that you jumped on, was that the Cinderella tour?
Certainly that was the first big one. I'm trying to think again. My memory is not as good as it used to be, but I think we did a couple of dates with Ozzy. You know, we were doing not necessarily tours, but jumping on dates with people.
Right.
Before that happened. And then when the Cinderella tour came, we were quite pleased.
Oh, that's awesome.
I want to interject a viewer comment because I can't agree more with this. CJ McClellan says, always enjoyed Mick's playing, very underrated for his time in the spotlight, in my opinion. I have to agree. You have a very unique style, and that run you do at the end of the Smooth Up solo is, you have to teach me that sometime. I'm a player as well, and it's an amazing run.
Okay, let me learn it first, and then we'll talk about that.
Well, you know, your guys' style, you know, on Freak Show, it kind of changes. You guys start bringing in a little bit more some creativity on your songs and going off in some different directions. You know, the first album was kind of more of a straightforward heavy rock album, kind of a party rock album, and then you guys kind of delve into some other you know, the lyrics start kind of being a little bit more complicated, and the songs, you know, the jams, you know, adding in different, you know, sounds and percussion and stuff like that. Was that something that you guys wanted to do from the get-go, and then the producer just kind of let you guys go? Because it's the same producer in all first of those three albums, you know.
Well, certainly I was more comfortable in the studio with the guitar sound. I basically just went from that cleaner sort of no gain first album tone, and I just, when they weren't looking, I just cranked up the amp, and
right.
You can hear how tortured it is, and I just love that. But the answer to your question is that it really was just a natural manifestation of us having been out on the road. I think we were out for, not necessarily on the road for 386 days, but that was the amount of time that we were out there actively working. So a lot of that is just natural, although you guys may have heard the story. I sat down to do an interview with a guy who really loved our first record. I mean, he just raved about it and gave us great reviews and everything. And when we sat down for the interview about the second record, I thought I could see a tear in his eye, because he looked at me and he said, "Mick, what did you guys do? What did you do? The first record, it was just happy and fun, and it was joyous. And the second record is so miserable, and you guys sound like you're pissed, and you sound hateful and angry." And I was like, "Dude, I'm so sorry. I had no idea that it was going to come off that way to you." But, you know, it's just was a natural progression. And yeah, we wanted it to be a little meatier, a little heavier, a little angrier, I suppose.
But think about it. That was the early 90s, and everything was changing. The landscape was changing. Music was getting a little bit less party and a little more.
I love Hang On St. Christopher. It's a great song.
Yeah.
Something different. It's got a great, you know, drum groove to it. And, you know, of course, THC Groove, you know, you guys, you know, came out. I think that was your first single on that album, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And at this point, you could probably call it a grave mistake. But at the time, and this references what you guys were talking about, at that time, everybody was coming out with ballads. Not everybody, but a lot of bands were leading with ballads, and ballads seemed to be the breadbasket of the business at that time. So again, you know, our reaction is to do the opposite, you know. So when people are coming out with all these ballads and making all kinds of money, I suppose, our idea was to hit with THC, you know, which is, you know, first of all, caused a problem for Warner Brothers, because you back then you couldn't really sing about that, and they couldn't get it played, and the promotional people were, you know, flipping out. So that's how we played the game, you know, for better or worse. I certainly don't regret the decision, but in hindsight, we probably could have done something else. And you know, to your other point about Hang On St. Christopher, I challenge anybody out there to listen to the original Tom Waits version and try to imagine how you would do that song, because that was the challenge before us. When Ted played us that song, I think I did something like this, like, oh my God, what the hell is going on here? Listen to that song. It's a great song, but it's you know, it takes some effort to reimagine it.
Sure,
Wow.
sure.
Now your third album, Zaza. I love that song, Mine.
Oh, wow.
It's an incredible song. I love it. And did you play on all the tracks on that album? Because wasn't that like a period where you were leaving, but the album wasn't finished yet, and then you went ahead and finished the record? Or did you go ahead and finish the record and do some dates after that? Or was that the album that Mark was wanting to kind of sabotage and tell them to not release the record? Was that where all the problems started happening, was on Zaza?
Yeah, that's correct. We finished the record, but Ted was largely absent at that point. At one point, he didn't want a couple of the guys in the studio at all. We ended up moving to, you know, a couple of different studios to do things. So it was a bit tougher on everybody. You know, it was a very fractious time for the band. But we didn't really have that much trouble going out and doing some of the dates until we got to a show at the Palace here in Hollywood. And that's where I just, after all the years, of Damage Control and, you know, succeeding in spite of certain people, that was where I said, okay, I'm above this. I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to listen to somebody disparage bands from the stage and embarrass us again. Sure. I'm not doing it anymore. Yeah. So then I guess Jimmy felt the same way and quit shortly after that. And obviously from there, you know, once you've said you're not working with guys anymore, you know, any sort of cohesiveness just dissipates. So we did a few more dates and I think at that point I cut my hair and they didn't know who I was when I came in the dressing room. It was kind of funny.
Yeah, that was 93, correct? 93,
yeah. Yeah. So then we just decided to part ways, and I rather foolishly let Mark and Lonnie take the name of the band. You know, in my estimation, it would have been better to just dispense with it entirely, and, you know, move on, which is what I thought was going to happen. And again, that was a foolish, naive way to look at it, but I was thinking that everybody was just going to start new, like I wanted to, and move on. But unfortunately, you know, if you look at the Wikipedia page now, there's been 70 or 80 guys in this band.
Wow. Now, you've been really gracious in previous interviews to not just totally trash, and I don't want you to. This is not a trash and bash session, but I am curious, do you think the problems with the person with whom you're speaking about, do you think those are largely ego driven? Was it just a lot of personality conflict? You know, you hear stories about Kevin Dubrow and how he trashed other bands in the press, and I know that did damage, and you're talking about doing Damage Control. Do you think a lot of these problems that surfaced, was it just totally ego driven, or do you think it was driven by something else?
I would say something else. I think it's much deeper than that. Okay. Much darker than that in my personal interactions. Right. So yeah, I mean, ego, who can't deal with that, right? We've all got them, some more than others. So let's put it this way. I wish it were just an ego problem. Okay. Yeah, enough said. And you've completely washed your hands of it. I mean, you have stated adamantly that you will never do anything with Bulletboys again. I assume that is still your stance. Yeah, and it's sad because that was my baby too. I mean, right. I've written a couple of things and people have responded to it and said, "Dude, you sound so miserable out there. How can you go out there and live a dream like that and be miserable?" Well, and that's why you kind of attempted a couple of times of some reunions with these guys, because it is your baby. I love them. You know, in spite of everything, I love those guys. I have chemistry with them that I don't have with anybody else, and I can play in a way that I really can't play even in the hot summers. It's just a different animal. And I loved that, and I loved being able to go back out keep in mind, when we first started, we'd only played a handful of shows. So when we went out on the road, we weren't necessarily what I considered to be a super tight, experienced, and road ready band. We were still learning how to play together and learning, how the songs maybe even should have been done in the studio. There are certainly things I would have done a lot differently in 1989 than I did in 1988, by my playing having evolved, etc. So yeah, it was really fun for me to get out and play these songs again with these guys. But unfortunately, it's not going to happen again.
Not meant to be. I understand.
Yeah.
In 93, that was the same year when all that was going on. That was the same year that Mark Free, announced that he was Marcy Free. And I always wondered, did the rest of the bands in King Kobra, did you have to answer a lot of questions over that? Was that something that people were coming to you? Did you know all of this was going on, something he felt before, or did they just kind of leave you alone and let Mark kind of answer those questions?
Yeah, I did get a lot, but I did get that particular question. Did you notice anything with Mark? And my honest answer is, yeah, there was something that made him look uncomfortable. And I could never obviously, pin it down to that back then. But there was something that was very different about Mark, and he felt, or at least looked to me, like he was out of place. And by virtue of him, splitting the band first, I would say that was pretty accurate.
And you have zero contact with Marcy at this point, I'm assuming.
Somebody said that he told them to say hi to me recently. So I've always been on great terms with Marcy, and his voice is just, to me, almost the pinnacle, of
absolutely
professionalism. I mean, there are shows out there where the sound is horrible and it's just a mess, and the band is loud, and that guy is just spot on every freaking time. It's amazing to me.
It's a gift for sure. Let's get a little bit of a studio talk in. So your studio is called Red Cake Digital, is that correct?
It is.
Okay, so I want to pick your brain for a second. Now, I'm assuming you've been doing this for years, and I'm sure you've learned a ton about the whole studio process. If, just a what-if scenario, if you, let's say, had the debut Bulletboys masters in your hands, what would you do a little bit differently, mixing wise? What would you, obviously change the guitar tone, it sounds like.
Yeah, I would pump up the guitars a bit more. I think the guitars are kind of buried. There'd be more overdubs.
Okay.
As I've said before, when we were recording that record, Ted took a lot of time to make sure that the rhythm section was right, a lot of rearranging of the songs. Mm-hmm. And so by the time we got to guitars, or what I thought was going to be guitars, they were largely done. I mean, there were punch-ins here and there, but most of what you hear is really basic tracks. Huh. In fact, there's the solo section on F-sharp 9. If you listen to it, mm-hmm. I'm kind of just guessing because I've never played it. Oh, so I would definitely do that. If you listen to, I put up some demos that we did with Garth Richardson. Okay. They're easy to find. I think they're on my YouTube page, perhaps.
Okay.
But that gives you a better idea of what my approach would have been. I mean, there's some funky panning things going on and everything, but the tone is raunchier. Cool. There's, the guitars are louder and there's more of them. So to me, I always tell a story, when we went to the studio and all the label people were there and our families were there, and this was supposed to be a joyous occasion, listening to our first album, right, for the first time. It's going to come out. And I just stood in the back of the room and I was mortified. I thought, oh my God, this is not going to be good. Yeah. I mean, it's just me though, right? I mean, I just had a different idea of how it was going to come out. And I gave those guys in the mix, they wouldn't let us in the mix. So I gave them some pretty lengthy notes, none of which they even paid attention to. Mm. So there's parts on there that I literally had like a delay planned for it, like kind of a Brian May tribute. nothing. Just the basic notes. And I thought, oh my God, I got screwed here.
That sucks.
So there, yeah, I mean, but ultimately you go to in-stores and people are, raving about the record, and you're hearing it over and over, and you're finally getting to play it on the road. And it all, I came around, basically. It was, it wasn't like the record had to do anything. I just had to come to an understanding that it was better for it. Because Ted is a great producer, and there are a lot of things that I would have done differently that definitely shouldn't have been done differently.
So is most of what you're doing nowadays in your studio? Is that where you're spending most of your time working on recording other projects? Yeah, it is. In fact, lately I've been jumping into mixing some old stuff I did in the 90s with, Jason Hook and Jeremy Spencer. Yes.
They were in Five Finger for a while.
Right.
Well, we did a lot of cool stuff back in the, I don't know, 95, 96 maybe. So I'm kind of diving back into that. I did it on a little 12 track. So now that I can put it into Pro Tools, and I can, I've got one track where there's vocals and hand claps and tambourine or something all on one track. So it's fun to kind of dissect that, and who knows, maybe that'll come out someday. I'm having fun looking at all the wavelengths behind you on that screen. You've got a project going right there. I can tell. Yeah. That's my little post-rock idea.
You're no stranger to like soundtracks, and I don't know if that's something you are currently you do as of now, writing songs for movies and things like that. I know that you had two songs on movies for Transformers, and of course the Iron Eagle with King Kobra, and then you also did Wayne's World. Is that right, with Bulletboys? Yeah. You did a cover of Sammy Hagar. Or was it? No, wait.
The Montrose. He was in Montrose at the time.
That's right.
We did. Oh man,
Rock Candy or something like that.
Candy. Yeah. Did a version of that. I think we're in Hot Tub Time Machine, and there's a few movies out with our songs buried somewhere in the back.
How does that feel? I mean, I would love to have at least one song, currently on a radio, of course, but yet you get to go to a movie and then bam, your song comes on. What's that feeling like? And is that, did you actually go to these movies and to watch them just to hear your song?
No, I to be honest with you, I have never seen Wayne's World, and I've never seen Hot Tub Time Machine. And
wow.
I think there's another, I think mine is in a song called Airborne, or a movie called Airborne.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I've never seen that either. So I guess I'm lazy about that. I remember that when we went to see Iron Eagle, and I was pretty excited. I thought, wow, this could be really cool. Yeah. And then they started playing our song in the credits, and everybody got up and walked out.
Oh, geez.
Okay. Let's not do that anymore.
So we've talked about the hot summers, and you mentioned earlier, you kind of reminiscing about talking about how you feel that you do some of your best writing, or you did some of your best writing and playing with the Bulletboys. Do you ever envision yourself starting an entirely brand new project that's kind of more in the Bulletboys vein?
No, but okay. I do envision a heavy, fun blues thing. I always imagined my last band will be a cool blues band where the songs are funny, the guitars are raunchy,
right? And
it's just tradition mixed with whimsy. So I don't know when that's going to happen. I've only got a couple of tracks started, as a sort of gestation point. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of what I envision going out on. We'll see.
That's cool. Do you have players in mind for that project?
No. Are you ready?
You bet. Let's do it. Show me that run, and then I'll be ready.
King Kobra, I always look back at King Kobra. Of course, Johnny Rod went on and played with Wasp, and of course, David has done some great things, a great player. You guys were basically a super group before you even knew you were a super group. I mean, very talented musicians, and I never understood, why things fell apart between, I don't know, was it Carmine or was it maybe a situation you just wanted to move on your own? And if so, why did you want to move on your own? Was it just kind of tailing off for you and you wanted to start something different, or were you guys just not seen eye to eye?
Well, I don't like to think of myself as a quitter, and I feel like I stayed in that situation much longer than was healthy. Mm-hmm. And I didn't remember this, but Jimmy told me that towards the very end, we had our rehearsal places down in where we ended up with Bullet Boys, and he reminded me that Carmine had taken off and done some dates with Vanilla Fudge. Mm. So Jimmy was coming in and playing on Carmine's kit, and we were just like spending time, just killing time. Wow. Really. Which I had forgotten, but that is the essence of why I left, because Carmine's interest had really waned to the point where he was searching for anything to get back on track, whether it was Kiss songs or whether it was some deal with some, lesser than label. So I could see the writing on the wall, and I was presenting things that weren't really being, I guess, cared about. Mm. So I thought, well, the obvious move here is to split and start auditioning guys, because Mark and Lonnie had both said, man, this is our band, we finally made it. We're playing with Carmine. This is great.
Are there any demos with those guys?
What's that?
Are there any demo songs with those guys?
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't heard any King Kobra stuff with them.
I think Kissing Kitty, because I brought Kissing Kitty to the band, and I think we did a version of it. That might be on the net somewhere. But I think, it was shortly after that in fact, Dave too. Dave was originally part of what was to become Bullet Boys. Yeah. So, I wasn't the only person, to notice what was going on. Oh, did I lose you guys? Sorry.
No, we're here.
We're good.
Okay, cool.
I've listened to King Kobra with Paul Sorrentino, and he sounds great on it. And I always wondered, did they ever reach out to you to do any reunions with them?
I'm going to plug this in. Let me see. Yeah, they wanted to go to Sweden. I think there's a rock festival in Sweden that they ultimately ended up doing. But I wasn't able to go. The numbers just didn't work out for me, and I was doing well at home, and like they say in rock and roll, hey man, it's not about the money, it's about the fun. Well, at some point, the money has to be at least
equal to the fun.
Yeah, it has to be similar at least. So so I stayed away for that one, and that was it for me.
I had a chance to open up for the Bullet Boys in '93, and this was soon after you already left, and I believe it was Tommy on guitar.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Pitman or something like that. He looked a lot like you, and I was like, but I said that's not Mick. But we got to open up for Bullet Boys, and it was in Missouri.
Missouri, huh?
Yeah, it was the House of Rock where we used to go play.
Oh yeah.
I think it might have been Joplin or something like that.
Cool.
But I met those guys in there, and then it would have been perfect if you were there, because then it'd have been all the original members. Anytime you open up for a great band and not all the original members are there, you're like, yeah, but it's always a but there.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, you don't even look like you're old enough to have been in that club. Are you sure you did do something?
Oh yeah,
that's such a sweet comment. So nice of you. Yeah, we're old. It's okay though. Well, so just we'll start wrapping stuff up with you. Tell me, what do you still hope to accomplish musically with your career before you call it a day?
Well, I really want to make sure some of the material that I've done in the past, because I get restless musically. I'll start something like the song that you see up here. I'm kind of struggling with one of the parts that I really think is an important part of it. So it's taken me a lot of time to get it done. And I'm notoriously slow at getting things finished. So I'd love to go back and at least finish some of the things that I've started over the years. And in the future, I'm looking forward to doing something like you were talking about, the cinematic approach. And that's what a lot of the post-rock stuff that I listen to now, it's instrumental. It can be very repetitious, and people, when I'm playing it, can say, what the hell are you listening to? But to me, it's cathartic, and it resonates with me because it is cinematic, you know, and it does sort of take you away. And that's what I hope to achieve. Although, you know, what I do is a little different, more guitar. Like a lot of these guys, they'll just, you know, do the 16s on one string, and I'm not going to do any of that. You know, I still want to play, but hopefully I can find the time to get that out in the near future.
Well, the beauty is you have your own studio, and you can tinker anytime you want and just start stacking those layers. I love the studio. You know, playing live is a blast. It's fun, but there's something just beautiful about building the house from the ground up in the studio and adding those layers and watching it come to life. So I'd be excited to hear you do something like that. That'd be amazing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, the studio it's a beauty and the beast, that's for sure. And it is funny how I can spend all my time here, and then when a date comes up, I start to panic, right? Like, oh my God, I got to take my guitar. I got to remember everything. I've got to fly. I've got to get to the gig. And it's just like from the minute I leave the house to the minute I get to the stage, it's just a nerve fest.
Yes.
And then as soon as I get on stage, it's like, oh my God, why don't I do this more?
Right. Yeah. It's definitely like a drug for sure. There's one more viewer question. We'll start to wrap this up. John Packlin, I hope I'm saying that correct, says, is that Ableton on the screen behind you? Do you know what that means?
Yes, it's Pro Tools, not Ableton.
Okay, Pro Tools. Okay, that answers that.
You know, it's amazing, you know, especially the genre that you guys were in the 80s and even the early 90s. But, you know, not many have done what you've done, and that is basically get on a kick-ass band, did a soundtrack, did some amazing things with King Kobra. You played with some amazing musicians. You know, you were in Hit Parader, you were in Circus. You know, you guys were going on tour. I believe you even played with Kiss. And then you go and jump on to another gig and blow the hell up with that gig as well. And the only thing that comes close to something that someone who accomplished something like that, where the guys, when they left Vinnie Vincent and then they started Slaughter, you know, that to me, that's like the two things that was King Kobra into Bullet Boys, and then what Slaughter became. And I believe that was like the only two bands back in those days that was able to accomplish something like that.
Off.
So that's a hell of an accomplishment.
That's a feat.
Some of us can't even get one, and you got two.
Way to go.
So that's
and I hope people don't misunderstand me when I seem like I am disappointed in that, because I'm not. When I sit back and I think about what I've done and all the people that weren't able to accomplish that, I'm very blessed and I'm very grateful for it. My problem is that I measure myself against Led Zeppelin. I measure myself against the Rolling Stones and bands that, you know, truly had it all together and kept it together. Yeah. And fought through all the inter-band, you know, fractions. And so it's just a matter of I guess I have to lower my expectations, but that's really hard to do, because I grew up in that day, and those were my expectations. My expectations were that we were going to succeed on a much larger level. So
of course
it's a conundrum, I suppose, but I'm okay with it. I sleep okay at night.
You're able to perform on MTV. I believe it was a show called Mouth to Mouth. You did a couple songs, a couple of your hits off your first album. Then you got to sit down and do an interview. Had one of those little phone things where people would call in and they'd push a button and you guys would answer a question. I mean, that had been an amazing thing. Just going in, you're on MTV live. You know, all the kids back then were watching MTV, so that had been a thrill of a lifetime, of course, right there for you.
You know, to his point though, I think when you set the bar as high as you set it, it's because you're very passionate and driven about what you do. You know, some guys get into this business and they just get lazy. And we're seeing kind of a pattern now of a lot of guys just kind of resting on the laurels of their past, and they're not trying to create new music. And here you are creating new music with a new project, and it just shows your drive and passion. I think it's good to set the bar high. I mean, why wouldn't you want to reach for the stars? That's what keeps you getting better all the time.
Yeah, it's hard enough to stay positive as it is, and as I'm sure someone else has said, there's no gain in planning for failure. You plan for success at every level, and you have to have expectations, in order to do that. So that's what I would encourage. I'd encourage people out there to set your bar really high, and
yes,
if you get there, set it higher again, and if you don't, you tried, and ultimately at some point, like I've come to grips with the fact that, like you said, I had an amazing career that a lot of people would, give anything for.
You bet.
And I'm very grateful and blessed, and, I'm very, very happy to be able to talk to you guys.
Certainly. We're blessed to talk to you as well. Let's put this up one more time. You guys go pick this up, thehotsummers.com. It is a great album. These guys put a lot of work into it, and it shows. Sounds great. We really dug what we heard, and hope everybody will go out there and pick up a copy. Will you please stay in touch with us and let us know how we can help you promote your stuff going forward? We want to be a platform and a voice for you guys to
10th grade, 9th grade, well, hell, probably 8th grade with King Kobra. But good stuff, man, and just loved everything that you've been able to accomplish, and hopefully more success will come your way, man.
Certainly. Thank you for your time, Mick Sweda. We appreciate you. Have a great night. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Have a great day.
Thanks, bye. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Awesome. He was talking about the Kiss songs, Gene, they were hoping to get on Gene Simmons records, at that time. Gene was wanting to do some production and get them on their record label, and but he had bigger, better plans, Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah, he's such a nice guy. I understand what he's saying, Yeah, people like you and me would have loved to have gotten to Bulletboys level, but, when you get there, if you're not striving for higher and wanting more, that means you've gotten lazy. So, props to him for setting that bar high.
Really cool.
I get it. Really nice guy. Thank you, Mick, for your time. Appreciate y'all being in here. We came on a little bit scattered, but I think we pulled it together. I just started a new day job, and it's been quite the transition, but I'm getting there. So. Thank you. You did a good job helping carry this.
Oh, I didn't carry nothing.
Well, you carried me. I appreciate you. Let's put up the fan chat real quick. Thank you guys for participating tonight. We appreciate y'all being here. Oh, I said Packlin. I'll bet it's Pacian, John Pacian. Thanks for participating in the chat. Leslie Allred, good to see you. Laura Bochette, saw Bulletboys in Savannah, Georgia many moons ago. I bet they were great. Elizabeth is here. Hi, girl. Kevin Agee. Mick is such a wealth of knowledge, but wow, it just scrolled off the dang screen. Oh, dang it. Oh, it's on here somewhere. Sorry, I lost your chat comment there.
Who's who?
Kevin Agee. I don't know if it's Agee or Agee. I don't know how to say his last name. Oh. It scrolled off my screen, so I missed the comment.
Sure. Now I'm
anyway,
going back to try to look for it, and I don't even see it.
Oh, it's there. I appreciate you all being here tonight. Hi, Doug Weber. Good to see you. Want to remind you guys, you got my name right that time. Pacian, John Pacian. Okay, cool. So, hey, like we told you at the start of the show, if anytime you want to see the show, the replays, or watch it live, you can do that on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. Or if you like audio format, you can check it out on Spotify.
Thank you for sending the stars, John. And if anybody else wants to send some, go right ahead.
Amazon, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. Thanks to our sponsors, Shipman Photos. If you guys need some new band photos or photos for your business, go to shipmanphotos.com. Get a hold of Greg. He will hook you up with some good-looking shots. Thank you to Okie PC. If you guys have IT needs, call Dustin at 918-640-0892. DEB Concerts. You guys make sure you check out the D&B processing stage at the Roadhouse at Rocklahoma. It's going to be a great time out there. Do you need screen printing? If you do, go to Identity Merch, and Todd will hook you up with some shirts. You can go to our official online store on our Facebook page. Get some shirts, a tank, or a hoodie. He'll hook you up with that. Psychomo Filmworks, if you guys need a video done, he is your go-to. Email psychomo@gmail.com. Let's talk real quick. We only have one in the can right now, but we're working on more. Monday, June 26th at 7 p.m. Central, it's a discussion about all things podcast. And yeah, maybe these guys aren't platinum selling artists, but we're going to get into some interesting discussion about the podcast business. So you guys will want to check that out for sure. Scott, what else you got? Anything?
Norman Voss says, just came on. Darn, King Kobra was my number one band in the 80s. Time to watch on YouTube.
Right on, man.
Terry Fleming says, thanks for another great episode.
Thank you, Terry.
Tulsa Music Stream, you're welcome.
Appreciate you.
It was great. I'm glad. He's, way kinder than I thought he would be. Mm-hmm. Not that I've ever, had any judgment on that. Just right. I always felt like he was a little more conserved, or
like more of a serious guy,
which I think he is. But he was a lot sweeter, of a sweet, serious guy. I could tell by the dealings on the emails that he was going to be a very sweet and kind guy, and he was for sure. So we appreciate Mick for coming on. We're going to get back to work on getting some more guests lined up for you guys. Thank you for watching. We appreciate you all being here. Have a great night. We'll see you again Monday, June 26th for our interview with Clint Switzer and Chuck Shute. It's going to be a good one. Y'all have a great night. Thank you for watching. You guys take care.
Bye-bye.